Hello and welcome back to Rock, Paper, Shotgun. Liam here, and I'm joined once again by Ed. How you doing, Ed?
Hello. Yeah, good. Just very Sonic'd. Spent a lot of time with the blue hedgehog that goes very fast. I'm feeling extremely weary about it all.
I'm very, very interested to have this conversation with you because, like you say, we've both been playing Sonic Frontiers, which I reckon is the best Sonic has been in over a decade. But we have very different histories when it comes to the little blue goblin. I've played pretty much every Sonic game that's ever been released for reasons I don't understand, because in the majority of those cases, I haven't had what I would describe as a nice time. In your case, you've never played Sonic or have played only a few, is that right?
I've dabbled very, very lightly in Sonic. At EGX, actually, I played one of the old ones, and it was all pixelated, and it was, a 2D side-scrolly thing. And I didn't like it at all. I thought it was rubbish. And I think I might have played Generations very, very briefly, like a preview thing. But I can't really remember it that well. So yeah, I have very little experience of Sonic, really.
What are your general impressions of Sonic Frontiers?
I think it's a mixture of elation and pure agony. It is fun. I like the open world. I like just the scattershot approach to it. Just lots of fun little side activities you can get on with. Well, they're not really side activities. They are like crucial to your progress in the game, but they feel like just random things chucked around that you can crack on with, and I really like those little things. I like the music. I think it looks quite nice. I think Sonic controls fairly well. There's a good sense of speed, which is like key to Sonic.
Yep, pretty important.
The sort of the agony part is when you go very fast and you stop going very fast because of some slight jank, then it's very frustrating. And that can happen like quite frequently. The game maybe doesn't feel quite as smooth as it should or could be. Some of the boss fights are naff. The open world kind of like structure and sort of progressing through that, I don't want to sort of spoil too much. It can get maybe a touch repetitive, but for the most part, like if you're just dipping into this each evening for an hour or so, it's a good time. I say it's a good time.
Yeah, I've written here in my notes, I don't think this is a good game, but I really like it. And I think maybe that's the fairest way of describing my feelings towards this. It's janky and it's rough, but in a very specific way that appeals to my tastes. It takes a really big swing, and although it doesn't necessarily connect in a way that maybe I would have liked it to have done, I really respect the hell out of what it's trying. And I think it's established a formula that moving forward, Sonic Team might be able to improve on it in a way that makes Sonic Frontiers 2 something quite special. I think we all thought in the pre-release footage for this game that it was Sonic trying to be Breath of the Wild, and I do think they've definitely cribbed a lot from that game. A lot of the musical tracks that play when you're out in the open world are very Breath of the Wild-like. It's got a lot of nice tinkling piano and grand vistas. Even the whole idea of an ancient technological civilization that's been ruined, still kind of fighting back, is, it's the same as Breath of the Wild. But I actually think this game has a lot more in common with Mario Odyssey.
Yes. Agreed.
The whole idea of it being a semi-open world, it's got open world zones, I guess. I think there's 5 in the game, these large islands for you to explore. And these areas are just stuffed with things to do. Mainly you've just got, I guess they're sort of like the game's shrines, which are little bits that open up the map. You complete very small puzzles. You might be doing a little block puzzle, or you might have to use his new spinning energy move to make a light on a tree disappear. They're a bit odd and abstract, but there's just like bits for you to tidy up. It's quite compelling in the way that Mario Odyssey was. I'm making that comparison, but this is a much lesser version of that game. But I do think it speaks to how good that formula is for a platformer, that even this version, which is rough and janky, still appeals to me because I'm just happy to be playing a game that has that similar formula. But I think the main thing I really like about this game is just the moment-to-moment movement feels fantastic. This is maybe the first time in ages where Sonic just feels nice to control. He's snappy, he's responsive. I find getting from A to B is so enjoyable. I'm happy to do mundane things because I just enjoy the act of pottering around. It reminds me a lot of games like The Pathless or Solar Ash. I don't know if you played either of them.
Oh yeah, Solar Ash I've played. Yeah, that's a great comparison actually.
Just games that are all about finding flow and prioritize movement. And it kind of doesn't matter what else you're doing, which is good because everything in this game, like its individual parts, a lot of them are really bad. You spend a lot of time collecting like hearts or medals to talk to Sonic's irritating friends, which I don't enjoy. I skip all of them. I don't think it looks very good personally. I think it looks really bad. It has atrocious pop-in. Awful. And considering 90% of the things in this world are floating grind rails, watching them pop in 3 feet in front of you isn't pleasant, and it's quite nauseating at times. It's a bit odd as well because the traditional portions of this game, you have what I would refer to as not classic Sonic levels, but I guess traditional modern Sonic levels, because this series is very bizarre, but fans will understand what I'm talking about there. You know, these kind of traditional, you go from one point to the other as fast as you can, a bit of fiddly platforming in the way. I think those portions look really nice. They look a lot like, you know, older Sonic games, but the rest of the game just doesn't. So yeah, I think as like a general up-top impression of this game, I wouldn't recommend people buy it full price. I think it's a really good Game Pass game, but yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I think like you were saying with the open world and the Mario Odyssey comparison, I think that's really important because it is just quite fun to spend some time just kind of picking away at little things on the map and earning stuff, and that feels good. Like it's just like a dopamine hit, and some of them are like actually like fairly creative. Some of them are slightly like what is this, like parry some orbs, but parrying is largely just holding a couple of bumpers down and not having to time anything at all, things like that. But yeah, I think it's like a very bitty, very fun jaunt around some like fairly fun open zones. I would say that it's quite directionless for a Sonic game. There are times where I found, well, plenty of times where I found I don't really know where I am in relation to anything on the map.
Yeah.
And the guide rails, I suppose the rails that are hovering in the sky and the bumpers that bounce you between places, all the classic sort of Sonic things that get you from point A to point B, they kind of just toss you around this map any which way, and you just find yourself sort of mindlessly ticking things off, and none of them really tie together. There are moments when they do, when sort of one kind of piece of the puzzle connects to another one, you kind of launch yourself between from A to B, I suppose. But sometimes you're just being flung around everywhere, and then eventually the game will say you've collected enough bits to talk to Knuckles now, and you've got to then find your way over to Knuckles.
Yeah.
And you look at all those guide rails, and really, you should know which ones will take you back to him. If it was all kind of one smooth sort of track, I suppose. But I often find I don't really know where I am on the map and how to get smoothly from any point to another one. And I don't know if that's what they're going for or not, but to me it just seems all a bit fragmented for a game. At least my understanding of Sonic is it's all meant to be one very smooth ride, bumping around, flying around everywhere. And it doesn't feel like that sometimes, in the open world at least, I think.
No, I completely agree. The game's lack of fast travel is felt quite keenly. It has a form of fast travel, I guess, but yeah, the guide rails are in the desert level, which is the second zone. There's like a mountain range in the middle. You might know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And just getting round that mountain range is an absolute nightmare. If you're in the northernmost part of the map and you need to go south for a boss or to find Knuckles, like you say, and you jump on that guide rail, it'll either take you nowhere or it'll take you entirely around the map, which will take you longer than just trying to muddle your way through that middle bit, which in of itself is not a fun experience. Directionless, I think, is a really good word to use for this game. And I think if you're happy for a game to muddle around in, this is perfect. But the second you want to do something specific, I think that's when it becomes agony, like you say. that's when you're just like, I hate you, Sonic. It's interesting when you say about this idea of Sonic is meant to be about smooth speed and getting from A to B in a very natural way. I actually find in my experience of 3D Sonic games, that's never been the case. And if anyone ever tells you that a game features that, they're a liar. I would say the first level of most games, like Sonic Adventure perhaps, is the purest form of that concept. And then it quickly devolves into, we want you to go really fast and also do the fiddliest platforming you've ever experienced in your entire life. Which, I mean, I think the original Genesis games have that issue as well. I think they've never quite understood what this character, who's meant to be a platform mascot and super fast, what he's meant to be in 3D. Compared to the other games, so I was playing a bit of Sonic Generations this morning, and I was trying to think about the differences between those older games and this one. And for me, the main difference is what I mentioned before. It's this idea of he moves precisely, which is rare for Sonic. It doesn't feel like I'm trying to steer a cargo ship. It feels like when I twist the analog stick, he moves. The camera's a different story, but as a character, he is snappy and precise. But you also have enough control over him that you can do those fiddly platforming bits to an extent. Sometimes that does fall apart, and sometimes you're like railroaded into a specific path. Like you might hit a grind rail, and the next thing you know, you're bouncing 500 feet into the air at 90 miles an hour and you can't pass what's happening. This game really still struggles from that, which is an issue these 3D games have had for ages. But I think although it is directionless, compared to those older games as well, it's almost a bit more focused. I guess it doesn't have a central gimmick that the game's obsessed with building upon. You know, this is a series that had an entry where you became a werehog.
Okay.
I feel like this one, the gimmick is that it's just Mario Odyssey. It's open world. And that serves this idea of having a fast character way better than any of the other gimmicks they've had in the past. My irritation with Sonic is, whereas Mario builds upon the previous iteration by taking out the best bits of it and polishing them up and maybe introducing one small mechanic that serves those pre-existing mechanics that it's got from previous games, Sonic will come up with this absolute unhinged concept. Oh, you're a werehog. And then will throw it away and do something different the next time around. And they never seem to just take what they've got that's good and polish it up like Mario does. And here I feel like they've got that foundation to maybe finally start doing that. It wouldn't surprise me if their next game is completely different again, you know, because that's just the trajectory they've been on for like a decade. Yeah, there's something to this, I think, that they've learned from maybe Mario. And yeah, I feel like because they don't have a gimmick that is silly or shoved in, it makes like the traditional levels feel a bit smoother going, because you're not trying to contend with this tacked on mechanic. You're literally just trying to get from A to B, maybe get some red coins on the way. And again, when you're open world as well, it's just, well, Sonic can run, he can jump, he can punch. Combat in this game is actually quite nice.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. It just feels a little bit like they've stripped a lot of it back and they've presented this idea of, okay, well, what if you just had a character that was very fast, nimble, and had a large playground to mess around in? And that's really all I've ever wanted from a Sonic game. I think every time I've tried a Sonic game, I've always kind of hoped that's what I was going to get. And here we finally have that. So is it perfect? No, it's not. I think I look at these reviews and I understand why they're divisive. I can completely understand why someone would give this a 10 and a 1. And I think both of those people are correct. But there's something to it, and you cannot knock it for finally trying to understand the core of what might make this character work, instead of just desperately throwing the kitchen sink at it, knowing that 8-year-olds are going to want it for Christmas regardless.
It is good. I think I do enjoy my time with Sonic. I would love for them to build on it, like you were saying, and it would be a shame if they just moved on and did something totally different from this. Because it feels like this could just be like refined a little bit. You know, that directionlessness could be tweaked. All those guide rails and all that sort of stuff could be linked in a better way for the next one. That slight jank could be eliminated. There's the whole leveling Sonic in this game feels fairly unrewarding. You kind of just collect bits and you give them to some rock elder people, the sort of people you'd see in a garden, and they just level your speed up or your ring capacity, and it's just a number that goes up by like 1 or 2 every time, up to like 99, and you're like, oh well, okay, cool.
So minor.
Yeah, and again, that could just be tinkered in some way. So I would love to see like a second crack at this, because it feels like they've got some real foundation. I also will say, I don't know if I feel like I'm unfairly comparing it to Odyssey, but I found when sort of traversing the open world, I sort of miss doing the little tricks that Mario could do. Getting from point A to point B as Mario, he may not be as fast, but it's actually more engaging to me. You could do, I don't know, little hop, skips and jumps, you know, a double jump into a barrel roll into whatever, sliding down little cliffs. There was like a little bit more variety, I think, to his movement than Sonic, which is kind of ironic.
Yeah, it's a more technically rewarding game than this. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think with Sonic, he feels incredibly reliant on the architecture in this game. If the architecture isn't changing in any of the zones, then it's just going to remain the same, moving between stuff.
That's a really good point.
So as you move through these zones, you go from, you know, a nice Death Stranding vibe to deserts to whatever. You're constantly hoping for the bounce pads and the rails, or you want something else. You constantly need something else for Sonic to move slightly differently. And in that way, the repetition kicks in, because that's the only way that he moves, really, in a different manner. Whereas I found with Mario, it might be trickier to kind of pull off those technical moves, but it didn't sort of feel like he was so reliant on new exciting blocks or whatever to get around. I know to a certain extent, yes, they introduce all sorts of new things or whatever, but I think at a fundamental level, that's the only thing I found, I think, with Sonic and Mario.
They could definitely learn a lot from Odyssey in terms of that core movement, considering how satisfying I do find the movement in Frontiers. If they expanded on that in the same way Odyssey expanded on Mario's moveset, again, I think they might be onto a winner with this. Yeah,
I think I've sounded quite down on it, but there are lots of moments where I've had a really good time. I think those cyberspace levels break things up really nicely. I think the music is amazing in them.
We talked about this good.
Before. We need like an album online of those, of everything. Great. Actually, all the music in the game. And when like Sonic's speed and the cyberspace levels like mesh their design, it is like brilliant. There are moments you're like, wow, this is so much fun. And all the smooth transitions and you're bouncing any which way. It is like really exhilarating when it all ties together. And I think Sonic Frontiers does bring that out a lot. There are lots of moments like that. I think it's just that slight jank, I think, which can just then bring in that absolute agony. It's very easy to be impatient with Sonic because of all the speed. So as long as you kind of eliminate that, you just go, okay, it is what it is. It's sort of like brain training. You've just got to just move on, eliminate that anger, and just go for it again. And it is fun. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. But I think all of your criticism is completely valid and important to detail. Well, thank you for joining me again to talk about Sonic. I think if you're interested in this game, approach it with an open mind. Understand that we're not saying it's perfect, but it's interesting and different. And I do think that's something that should be celebrated. So yeah, thank you for jumping on.
That's fun.
You'll have your words on the site at some point, which you'll have to go check out. And we'll both be back very, very soon. For all your PC gaming needs, make sure to check out rockpapershotgun.com. And it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Ed.
Bye.